If you've been wondering how you can lose a client, this is the episode for you. Keep watching because we're going to discover the 7 foolproof secrets to how you can lose a client. And if you add all those secrets together, you're guaranteed to succeed. But why would you want to lose a client? Surely it closes the door on opportunities, income, and the sustainability that makes your business succeed. But when you know how to lose a client, you also know how to keep one. So whether you're here to learn how to lose clients or keep them, keep watching. This is the episode for you. Welcome to the League of Visionaries podcast by YaziMedia. This is your place to meet visionaries, professionals, experts, and entrepreneurs driven by a deeper purpose to live their legacy. This podcast is for you if you too are a visionary driven by a deeper purpose in your work, your play, and your investments. I'm your host, Marie Roux, the media strategist to visionaries, speaker, the founder and owner of YaziMedia Virtual Media House. My mission is to empower professionals, experts, and entrepreneurs to share their visionary message with the world. Connect with this League of Visionaries to explore the power of a purpose and how to bring yours to the world in each episode. You can catch the latest episodes on your favorite podcast platform or simply drop in on our YouTube channel. Follow and subscribe so that you can get the League of Visionaries podcast in your inbox. Now, why in the world would I make an episode like this? The truth is, this has been bugging me for a while because over the past few months, I've noticed a pattern. I've worked with a number of freelancers and contractors and other service providers because when you have a visionary message to share and you're building a business, well, at some point, there's only so much you can do yourself. So I've really been wanting to build a team, whether it's in my business, in my family and at home, or in other areas of my life where I really want to empower people to do more and also make use of that to help scale and grow my business. So I've really been obsessed with this idea of frightening concept of developing as a leader. Something that I had always resisted. Hey, I'm a loner, I'm an introvert, I love to do things myself, and I like things. I like working with things and objects and information. The truth is, working with people is difficult for me. And although I love them, it's like herding cats, right? It's not that I want to control people, but I want to be in control of the outcome or the quality for something like my business or what happens in my family's life or at my home. So these are questions that I've really been grappling with because I'd prefer not to be in charge of anything, but that way, there's only so much I can do in this world. There are amazing software applications and artificial intelligence applications and algorithms and who knows what that can do things for me, but I haven't found one that can clean my house. I've not found one yet that can do all the little things that I need to help my business succeed. And so I've been hiring people, sometimes with great results, but sometimes I've had to terminate those relationships because I simply wasn't finding the quality of work that I wanted to see. And this left me feeling really bad, especially after more or less the 5th person in a couple of months just did not make the grade. Now, I'm the kind of person who first looks at myself and very easily turns the blame towards myself. So when I found that I was working with freelancers and contractors who just weren't living up to expectations or the agreements we'd made, I kept asking myself, but what did I do wrong? Did I not give the right instructions? Did I not give valuable feedback? Did I not give them a chance to improve? Did I not make sure that there's every opportunity to succeed? Did I not communicate clearly? What did I do wrong? And at a certain point, people were beginning to say to me, the only thing you're doing wrong at this stage is that you haven't fired them. Wow. I thought that's a little harsh, isn't it? But you know what? They were right. I have not been perfect in the way that I've communicated with all these people, but hey, I'm still learning as well. And it is a two-way street. So here are the things that I've discovered I really, really want to share with those people so that they can understand next time they're doing a freelance job, or they're contracted to someone, or they are consulting, or they are a service provider. What is it that they did wrong last time? And how can they get it right in future? Let's go take a look at the 7 secrets to how to lose a client or keep one. We're counting down, and secret number 7 is to get started fast and get it done, especially in the freelance world. And for those of you who are familiar with Upwork and similar platforms for connecting with freelancers, being prompt and quick and responsive is the best way to get a job. Very often on Upwork, the fastest freelancer is going to snatch the opportunity. Now, it's very, very important to get started fast. And if you are working on Upwork, there's already a legal agreement in place between the client, Upwork, and the freelancer, so that there's no negotiation required except for maybe what exactly is going to be needed, some of the specifics, but the basic agreement is already in place. So you don't need to negotiate all those things. You just need to get clarity on what does the client want and what does the freelancer want. But out in the world, we often have more complex agreements, and we often have them directly with another person. Now, especially if you're working with people on a more casual basis and you don't have a stack of legal documents that are involved, sometimes you haven't covered all the bases. So it's really, really important, whether you're the freelancer or you are the client, to make sure exactly what it is that is expected of you. So if you're the freelancer, or you are the contractor, or you're the service provider, if you have all your agreements in place, that is what is discussed with the client. It probably should be on paper. But even if it is, ensure that everybody understands everything. If there isn't an agreement yet, really be sure that everybody knows what is expected of me, what are my rights, what are my responsibilities, how do we communicate? Are we going to communicate by email? Are we going to communicate in face-to-face or online meetings? Do we communicate by WhatsApp text messages, voice messages? Do we use Loom, which I love, by the way? Such a great way to just create a quick video where you can include your screen and show things to people. But I digress. How are you going to communicate, and how long do you need for a response time? Are there times when you will be unavailable, or the client is unavailable? What is the way to do this? So before getting started fast, that is the thing to keep in mind, because if you just get started fast and get it done, it probably isn't going to be at the standard that everybody wants. And that's a great way to lose a client. By the way, the matter of communication is one that's really important. When I have set out really clear agreements about communication, what platform do we use? How long do we take to communicate with each other? If you send me a message on a Friday at midnight, am I really obligated to get back to it until Monday morning? And if you are in another time zone, or if you have a limited working hours, if you're side hustling, when are the times that people can expect to have communication? So really, really be sure about that. The next point, secret number 6, counting down, your work is your client's top priority. Well, guess what? Chances are your client is hiring you because they've got better things to do. Yes, you're an expert in what you do. And yes, your work is valued. Otherwise, they wouldn't call you in. But you know what? your client does also have other things to think about. So if you're going to constantly be tugging at their skirt tails or needing their attention or wanting to tell them absolutely everything or giving them complicated stuff to deal with or giving them a ton of homework, you're not making your client's life easier. You're making it more difficult. When the client starts to think, it would be easier to do this myself, you're in trouble, because it is often easier to do it yourself than to hire somebody else. So if you want to keep your client, ask yourself, what is the top priority here? Is it you constantly disturbing your client with your work? Well, they might have communicated with you that it is, and in that case, of course, go ahead. But if you can make their life simple and richer, you're in a much better position. We'll take a look at the flip side of that soon. Counting down, secret number 5. Never let them see you sweat. You've heard this before, and many people who train freelancers and businesses would say, remember, be professional, put on a brave face, your personal life should not come to work. And yes, there's some truth in this, because of course you do need to put up all the professionalism that you can. But if you're keeping quiet, you're losing your connection, and you're not telling your client when you run into problems, that's like, you know how they say a lie is like a snowball? Silence is like a snowball. If your client doesn't know that you're stuck and they're expecting work and then it arrives late, that is a problem. Telling them in time that you're running into a problem, that's much better. So if you're working on a project for a client and you run into a problem, the best way to make sure that this doesn't turn into losing them is let them know. Even if it's just a quick message to say, I have run into a problem with this, I'm expecting a resolution, here's what I'm doing to fix it. And maybe they even have information that can help loosen you up or get you out unstuck. But do what you can to resolve it, but don't keep quiet, because when a problem like that escalates, you end up really, really being in trouble, and you can lose the trust that the client has in you. Secret number 4, stick with a work agreement. Well, when there is an agreement with a client, it's really important to stay with it, right? Well, yes, but remember secret number 7 about getting started right away? This is why it's so important to really discuss your agreement with your client before you get started, so that you don't end up in a position where you're hating the job because now you feel that you've worked far more than what you had agreed to in the beginning. Or if you feel this is actually unfair, or if you are finding that things are not working out. Well, if things are not working out, it's important to communicate. And if things are not working out with regard to the time you're putting in, the payment that you're getting, pause and ask to meet with a client, preferably in person if that's possible. If you're in different places, you can also have a video meeting, but make it as real as possible. If this is only text, it's going to turn into a long, epic conversation. And trust me, I've been in enough of those to tell you that you do not want to go there. But get together and talk about what's not working out. If you really feel that the rate is no longer reasonable, give them an alternative. Offer to perhaps outsource it to a junior that you can supervise, or offer to recommend someone else who can take over the work, or maybe it might be time to just terminate the contract. If things are really not working, it's okay to not continue with a work project, an agreement, or an arrangement. But the thing is, if you're going to work with a grudge, or if you find that there really is a problem that can't be surmounted, it's not going to get better. It is just gonna get worse. Take it from me. I've been on the client side of that. I've been on the freelancer side of that. And communicating in time is so, so important. Yes, stick with a work agreement, but make sure that it's rock solid before you start. And if you see that there's a crack, talk about it. Number 3. Oh, treat your client like your bestie. Now, we're living in a world that's changed a lot. There's a big difference between the relationship between a client and a contractor and the situation that there would have been between a boss and an employee. Your client is not your boss. And it's great to have a personable, friendly, warm, casual relationship between you and your client, where you don't have to feel all, uncomfortable and hyper professional. But at the same time, you might find that when you're dealing with your bestie, you're not always so respectful. You take them for granted at times, and sometimes you're just a little bit plain rude. A client is not your friend in that respect. Remember, the client is the one who provides you with opportunities. And for that reason, it really is important to think carefully about how you communicate with your client. What is the amount of information that they do need? Yes, of course, if you're really getting stuck in your personal life, or there is something they really need to know about, let them know respectfully. But sending pushy messages to them, for example, or simply just being rude or not appreciating them, especially dropping off on communication, this is still a professional relationship. So there is a better way to treat your client than as your bestie. Yes, you do want to have that openness. You do want to trust them. You do want to be sure that there's a really good, strong, solid relationship and that you like each other. But do maintain that respect. And we'll look at the antidote to this secret soon. Secret number 2 to losing a client. Always remember, you're the expert. Do it your way. This is a very, very common belief among experienced freelancers, and they often give out this advice. They often say, remember, you're the expert. If your client is dictating to you, you need to take control back, get in the driver's seat, because they hired you because you're an expert. They don't know what to do. So it's important that you take control, otherwise your project will fail. Well, there is truth in this, especially when you really are an established expert already. But what's very important to agree on with your client and to find out is, what does your client really want? They know their business, they know their market, they know their products. So your expertise is incredibly valuable, but you still want to give them what they want. And where there are areas where there needs to be negotiation, it's important to discuss that openly, not to sit and be begrudging about it on your own while struggling through the instructions that they are issuing that you might find a little bit unreasonable, but really to go and say, look, as an expert, this is what I advise. You're saying something different. Let's talk about this. Because there are areas where they may really want what they say they want. If this happens, get it in writing, because if they disagree with what you have done and they then fail because you were not allowed to do what you wanted to do as an expert, well, then it's on them, isn't it? But really be willing to have that conversation. If I wanted to have brain surgery and I told the surgeon how I wanted the job done, clearly the risk is on me, right? Well, you're very much in the same position. If you're freelancing, contracting, or if you're providing a service, you know your stuff. But if the client wants to have things done differently, have it done their way, make sure they understand the risks, make sure they understand your recommendations and your reasons for it. And after having that conversation, get it down in writing in case there's any unhappiness later. If you handle a negotiation like this with diplomacy and respect and expertise and authority, you can come out in a much better position and be trusted far more in the work that you do. But really do have that discussion with your client. If you decide that you know better than the client and the client is unhappy because you are not listening to their needs, you're going to lose that client for absolute certain sure. So I'd like to tell a little story here. I recently recommended to a client that they work with a freelancer that I know who provides services on a certain online advertising platform. Now, she actually is not quite an expert yet, but she's taken a course. So she's one of those people who has the fresh knowledge, which is an asset, but she hasn't had much practical experience. And she made recommendations based on what she learned in the course, but without experience and, very importantly, without listening to the client. And the more the client explained what his needs are, the more the freelancer insisted on what she'd learned in her course, which of course would give her the highest revenue from the client without guaranteeing any results for the client. Now, this became quite an embarrassing situation. And what eventually happened was that the client was unwilling to continue working with her simply because she hadn't listened. Now, if she had been willing to have this conversation and say to the client, well, having learned these things from the most recent sources, this is what I would recommend. What are you looking at? What are your goals? What are your needs? What is your budget? And then the client could have said, well, that's interesting, and I value that input, but right now, here is what I need, and this is what my budget is. They could have had a really constructive conversation, and they could have ended up with a really good result. Instead, they both ended up having lost time and lost trust. And the saddest end to that story was that I then invited the freelancer to a debriefing discussion, and we set up a meeting to meet online for a video call, a Zoom call, and she didn't show. And she didn't make an excuse, even after receiving a reminder. So definitely a fail-proof secret to success if you want to lose a client. And now for the final, very, very most important secret to success if you want to lose a client. Number one, don't give a fork. Yes, you heard that right. You see, when you don't care about the client, you don't care about the sustainability of that relationship. You don't care about your work and you don't care about your reputation. You are guaranteed sooner or later to lose that client. Clients love to work with people who care, people who take pride in their work, people they can trust, people they can carry on going back to again and again and again. And you see, I've told you how over the past years, I've lost service providers and contractors and freelancers who were not able to deliver the service that I was looking for. But you know what? At the same time, there are people I now continue to go back to. And not only that, I'm doing everything I can to raise the rates I pay them, and I'm recommending them to other people. Why? They give a fork. They give a fork about me and my business and my clients and the service that they offer us. They give a fork about the work they do, about their reputation, about their sustainability, and about making a difference in the world. And that is the secret to keeping a client. So now that you know how to lose a client, let's quickly run down those 7 secrets. Secret number 7, get started fast and get it done. Secret number 6, your work is your client's top priority. Secret number 5, never let them see you sweat. Secret number 4, stick with a work agreement. Secret number 3, treat your client like your bestie. Secret number 2, you're the expert. Do it your way. And secret number 1, the ultimate deal breaker if you want to lose a client. Number 1, don't give a fork. But now you've been figuring out if these are the secrets to losing the client. How can you keep a client? How can you ensure that that client keeps coming back, wants to offer you more money, and keeps recommending you to other people so that your reputation grows and the work you do is work you can take even more pride in? Here are the opposites of those 7 secrets if you want to keep a client. So secret number 7 to keeping a client: get 100% clear before starting. Get clear on what your client needs. Get clear on what is required of you, how you will communicate, when you will communicate, how long you're willing to wait to communicate or to hear from your client, and exactly what the outcomes are. What is your definition of success? And what is your client's definition of success for the project you are working on together? If you're both clear on this, you have so much of a better chance of succeeding, and you won't need to revisit your agreement in the course of a project. Secret number 6 to keeping a client: your work is to simplify and enrich your client's life. Don't make it difficult for them. Make it easy. Be consistent, be reliable, communicate, let them know what's going on, but don't overwhelm them with information. Make it easy and delight them, and they'll keep coming back and recommending you. Secret number 5 to keeping a client is stay connected, especially when you're struggling. So agree with your client how often you need to check in, let them know how you're doing, how often they want to give feedback, and give them open access. It's so easy nowadays working online. Give them access to the materials you're working on so they can see the progress. And then if you run into a problem, let them know ASAP. Let them know what your problem is, what you're doing about it, and how soon you expect it to be resolved. And if there isn't a resolution, let them know immediately so they don't have an unpleasant surprise at the last minute. Secret number 4 to keeping a client is negotiate the work agreement. And this should probably happen right at the beginning before you get started. Make sure your agreement is rock solid and that any holes in that agreement are plugged before you get started. Really be clear on what is expected from each party. What do they want from you? What do you give? What do you get? And the same for the client. And if you're running into a problem, talk about it. Negotiate it and find solutions. It's much better if you see that it's not possible to go forward to address that as soon as possible. If the client is reasonable, they'll be open to this, especially if you approach it in a respectful way. And if they're not, well, then it's your choice, right? Whether you continue to work with them or how you approach the rest of that project. But do this sooner rather than later. There's no point to working on a project with a grudge and hating the work that you're doing and feeling exploited. Really go and discuss it with your client respectfully the moment you see a problem. And the best way, prevent it from the outset by really checking things out before you get started. That is secret number 1. Secret number 3 is not to treat your client like your bestie, but rather treat them like your crush, your mentor, and your hero. Yes, you do want a level of authenticity and really mutual support and caring and openness and honesty with your client. But remember to treat them with respect. They've got lives too. And if there are problems, keep in mind that they appreciate your understanding as much as you appreciate theirs. And you can lead your client if they're not doing so well in that department. You set the example, you set the trend. Most of all, be kind to them, be respectful to them. Without your client, you've got a whole lot more to do when it comes to making your mark in the world. Your client is your opportunity to succeed. Secret number 2 to keeping a client. You may be the expert, but your client is the expert on what they want. So to make the most of your expertise, listen, listen, listen. Listen to your client first. Really understand their needs. Keep listening as you go along, and especially listen to feedback. If they give instructions, make sure you know those instructions to the letter, that you follow them, clarify them, make sure you're 100% clear, make sure you're fully implementing them. And when they get back to you with feedback, really pay attention to that. And especially if you're doing other projects for them in future, make sure that you remember and don't make the same mistakes again. Because yes, you're the expert on what you do. Your client is the expert on what they want. And then secret number 1 to keeping a client. Do give a fork. Do care about your client. Listen to their needs. Help anticipate where they're at. Think about what's best for them. Because when you serve your client, you're going to get better results. And you're going to find that their results that they get with you are what keep them coming back. Care about them, care about your work, care about your reputation, and care about the impact that the work you and your client do together has in the world. If you follow those 7 secrets to keeping a client, you're sure to do it. And having worked with so many people over the years, I'm really grateful to all of those who've fallen short. And we're talking of everything from very simply not quite following instructions to downright rudeness to actual revenge. I can tell you hair-raising tales of service providers who just get completely stuck in their ego, stop listening, and really go for outright childish behavior that just doesn't belong in a professional relationship. But the fact is, having been a client to all of those people, I can see what the lessons are that I can learn as a freelancer or as a business owner, as a service provider, as a contractor. But I've also learned a thing or two as a client, because it's important for a client to make these conditions, these 7 secrets, possible for the people that we work with. And as a client, I'm learning that it's important to be clear on the agreements that we have before we get started. Instead of getting started fast and getting it done, we really need clarity on who does what. And as a client, that responsibility begins with me. Now, if you're a freelancer or you're a service provider and your client is not taking that responsibility, take it on you. The next thing is to be sure that I can communicate to the people that I work with as a client what my requirements are and where their work fits into my priorities. Very often, I can't afford to be disturbed constantly by somebody who needs help or guidance or advice or who wants to tell me how they're doing. But if we've agreed that every day or every week they check in with a status update, that's perfect, because then I know what they need. Also, if they run into a problem and it's an emergency issue, I want to know about that. But I don't want to organize my life around managing the people who are doing work for me. And no client does, but we can only claim that when we've communicated that. I also need to make it clear as a client to my freelancers or to my service providers and contractors that if they are running into a problem, they need to communicate with me. So we need an open line of communication within that professional context. The next thing is work agreements. And as a client, I've often shot myself in the foot because I have thought that I would like to help people who are doing this for the first time. Maybe it's the first time they're working at all, or maybe it's the first time they're freelancing, or maybe they're in a new line of work. And my vision was to support them and nurture them and help them build their skills. And this is a very noble vision. And as a natural born teacher, I really enjoy that. But I built work agreements that did not demand high standards from them, especially because I felt, well, they're learning, it's a kind of an internship, so they can get the feedback and I expect to spend time on it anyway, and I can go and mop up the mess afterwards. But the fact is, if I'd created a more robust work agreement where there was time that I should have built in and did not, for them to actually do revisions so that the work they finally deliver to me is perfect. And they can then learn that doing things right the first time is actually going to benefit them because then they save time. That would really have benefited me, because I ended up in a situation where I was not demanding the quality of service that I wanted. And then I would give feedback, but they wouldn't pay attention to it. Next time they make the same mistake. And I just started feeling really frustrated because here I had people doing work for me. I was paying them. And then I had to spend the same amount of time doing the work. It would really have been easier for me just to do it myself. So as a client, that is a lesson for me. The next one is what is the relationship? How do we treat each other as a client and a service provider? And I really think it's so important to have a human connection. And my experience has been that that's where the depth of a working relationship grows. But at the same time, it really is important to keep the respect from me as a client to the service provider as an expert in their field, but also to demand the same respect from them and to always keep it civil and play clean, even if there are disagreements. The disagreements, if we handle them well and professionally, can actually build and strengthen the relationship. And I've definitely seen this with excellent contractors that I've worked with who ran into a problem. We talked about it openly. Everybody had strong feelings, but we were professional and we were civil, and we actually came to agreements that led to a much better product, a much better working relationship. And at this stage, I would recommend those people any time of the day. Why? Because we could actually get over the obstacles together. When it comes to the expertise, as a client, it's really important for me to work with freelancers or contractors and simply say to them, this is where I respect your expertise and that's why I'm hiring you. But here is the outcome that I want. Within that scope, you do whatever it takes, do it the way that it works for you. But this is the outcome that I want. And what I've also found in the best professional relationships, when I'm clear about the outcomes and I say where I want the last say and where I completely hand over control to the contractor, that's been when we get the best results. And interestingly, the more a contractor proves their value, the easier it is to hand over control, because I am a control freak with trust issues. So it's really important to be clear on those things as we start. And finally, giving a fork. Oh man, oh man, oh man. People can develop a sense of care for the work we do when they have a sense of care for the work they do. So perhaps a lot of this has to do with looking who you're working with in the first place. Really take a look at their portfolio, look at what they've done in the past, look at their recommendations. And if they haven't done anything yet, do a quick project just to test the waters, a quick small project so that you can see how that working relationship works. Because if you kick off with a big project, you're going to have all your teething problems on the big project. You kick off with a small project, it's like a first date. You know, you can see if you like each other and see where things go from there. But if you start with a big commitment, it can be very difficult to sustain. So that small project, just to test people out, see how are things going from the outset, and then really build that sense of care. And for me as a client, to help people foster their vision for where they're going, if I'm working with a freelancer or a contractor, or even a service provider, is really exciting. And the outcome of this is the most beautiful thing to see, because in working relationships that go well, I finish a project with people and everybody is glowing, excited, proud of what they've accomplished, and they just love each other more, and they're ready to recommend each other, and they talk about the project. It's so different from ending up dissatisfied or worrying about a project, or like feeling that you need to warn people about a service provider in future. I mean, how sad is that? So here is the bottom line. If you are the freelancer, the contractor, or the service provider, take responsibility. Take responsibility and go and really see how can you use those 7 secrets to support your client, keep them coming back, keep them recommending you, and have them throw more money at you. And if you're a client, remember, it takes 2 to tango, and bring out the best in the people you work with. It's been a journey for me to discover that maybe there is no shame in the fact that some working relationships just are not meant to be forever. But there's also a lot to be learned, and I'm hoping through this process that I can learn. I want to dedicate this episode to all the freelancers, the contractors, and the service providers who have kept me awake at night, the ones who have given me a couple of new white hairs, the ones who have had me banging my head against the wall because I just didn't know how to get better work out of them, and I didn't know how to communicate with it about it, because I suppose we all have those moments where there's a disconnect. So I thank them for teaching me, and I hope that they and these lessons can be something that can serve you, whether you're a freelancer, a contractor, a business owner, or just a visionary who works with clients who help give you the platform to share your visionary message. You've been listening to the League of Visionaries podcast by YaziMedia, proudly brought to you by Totally Morpheus. Subscribe to the League of Visionaries podcast here on your favorite podcasting platform, and follow YaziMedia on LinkedIn to find out more about how you can share your visionary message with the world. If you are a visionary, chances are you are also a leader. But what is your current leadership state? The way you are leading right now, your default setting, if you will. The EG3 Leadership Assessment helps you to understand the way you lead, your strengths, and your potential challenges as a leader. And most importantly, how to create your unique leadership legacy. It's fast, it's fun, it's free. It's the Egg 3 Leadership Assessment from Totally Morpheus. And when you take this assessment, you will get an instant report right away, pointing the way to your living leadership legacy. Find the Egg 3 Leadership Assessment now at totallymorpheus.com.